All right, welcome back, everyone. We're diving into a mountain of cybersecurity news this week, all from mid-December 2024. Articles, blog posts, even an audio update from a real expert.
Oh, stop it.
Hey, it's true. But seriously, we're going to pull out the important stuff for you. The trends to watch, the things that made us go, wait, what? And most importantly, what it all means for you. Because let's face it, this stuff affects everyone.
It really does, and when you look at everything together, like we're doing now, you kind of start to see, well, maybe a turning point in cybersecurity, I mean.
Turning point, huh? That sounds kind of, I don't know, ominous. What makes you say that?
Well, there's this worry about the federal cybersecurity funding for states, right? Might just disappear next year.
Seriously.
Yeah, some reports say so. And if that happens, states, especially smaller ones, local governments, they're going to be in a tough spot trying to cover even basic security on their own.
Makes sense. Like, what kind of basic security are we talking about?
Think security training, making sure people don't click on phishing links, and basic protection for their computer systems, the foundation, really.
And if they can't even cover that,
Yeah,
that makes everyone nervous, right?
absolutely. And this is all happening while tensions with China are, well, they're heating up. There's a lot of talk about getting more aggressive in cyberspace, pushing back.
Oh, yeah, I've seen those headlines.
But how far is too far? That's the question. If U.S. companies start doing offensive cyber stuff, they become targets themselves. And let me tell you, China's got a pretty powerful cyber force. Retaliation could get messy.
So it's a tough situation. Got to protect ourselves. But poking the dragon could have some serious consequences, which, speaking of big players, what about that story with Amazon delaying their Office 365 rollout? They said it was security issues, but I don't know. I'm a little skeptical. Feels like there's more to it.
Yeah, I think it's probably a bit of both, honestly. On the one hand, they want to look good, right? Like the safer choice.
Especially after some of Microsoft's security hiccups lately.
Exactly. But it's also a power move. By delaying, they put pressure on Microsoft to improve, which could give Amazon an advantage.
Like they're playing chess, but with our data. It makes you wonder how much we can trust AA of these tech giants when they make security promises.
Yeah, it's a tough one. We have to be smart, do our research. Don't just take their word for it. Look at their history, their track record. Are they open about problems, quick to fix things? That's what matters.
Good point. And speaking of Microsoft, they're really pushing passkeys as the password killer. So is this it? Are passwords finally going extinct?
Well, passkeys are definitely a step forward security-wise. Instead of a password, you use these encryption keys, right, to prove it's you. Much more secure. But there are some kinks to work out.
Like what?
Well, imagine losing your device. Poof, there goes your key. And getting everything to sync across all your different devices, that can be a pain. So I think passwords might hang around a bit longer.
At least there's movement towards stronger security, though, even if it's a little slow. Keeping your systems safe is super important as businesses rely more and more on digital systems, and that's where turnkey cybersecurity can really help.
Yeah, we're here to help small businesses just like yours make sure they're safe and sound in this crazy world of cybersecurity. And we offer a whole suite of services specifically tailored for you. So that's ensuring CMMC compliance and doing penetration testing. We also run vulnerability scans, and we can help you develop a comprehensive risk assessment.
And it doesn't stop there, right?
No, it doesn't.
We handle incident response, should the unfortunate happen, and we guide you through migrations like GCC. We just want to make sure your transitions are smooth and that you're secure.
It's all about peace of mind, right? You focus on what you do best, running your business, and we'll make sure that your digital world is safe and sound.
Now, let's talk about something that's been looming over government contractors, CMMC. It's official, it's in effect. Can you give us a quick rundown on what it is and why it matters? Even if, some of us don't work directly with the Department of Defense.
Right. So CMMC stands for Cybersecurity Maturity Model Certification. Think of it like a report card for cybersecurity. Specifically for companies working with the DoD, they set the standards and you got to meet them to do business with them. But the thing
It
is,
goes beyond just the direct contractors, right?
exactly, if you're in their supply chain, even indirectly, you might have to comply too. And it's not something you can ignore.
So even if contracts aren't specifically requiring it yet, companies need to get moving.
Absolutely. Some agencies are already using CMMC scores to decide who gets contracts. There was even an article about a company, they were the lowest bidder, but they got denied because their score wasn't high enough. Ouch.
Wow, so that's really happening. So ignoring CMMC is not an option. What should companies who are behind be doing right now?
Don't panic, but don't wait either. Get familiar with the rules, figure out where you stand security-wise, and make a plan to get compliant. There's already a big backlog of companies waiting for assessment, and it's only going to get worse. Sooner is definitely better.
Okay, solid advice. And, it's not just government contractors who need to think about security. It's all of us. One article I read, it gave this interesting advice to consider internet and cell service when you're, like, buying or renting a place. Have you ever moved somewhere just assuming you'd have decent internet and then, surprise?
Yeah, it's one of those things you take for granted until it's gone. I remember reading about someone who leased a building, thought they'd have fiber optic, but it turned out it was dedicated to another tenant. What a mess.
So what can we do to avoid that kind of headache? Should we be bringing our IT people to house huntings now?
Well, maybe not that far. But seriously, do your homework. Before you sign, check with internet providers about what's available, what the speed is like, all that. Don't just trust what the landlord or seller says. Confirm it yourself. Could save a lot of hassle later.
Great tip. Now, shifting gears completely, let's talk drones. They become quite a hot topic. One article I saw, it said the FAA banned all L drones in New Jersey. Can you imagine getting a drone for Christmas, all excited, and then bam, you can't even fly it?
It does seem drastic, but apparently there were tons of drone sightings in the area, causing concerns about, well, security and privacy. It shows how we're still figuring out how to handle drones as they get more and more common.
So is this a sign of things to come, more bans? And what does it mean for businesses using drones, for deliveries or inspections or whatever?
It's hard to say if this is the start of a trend, but it definitely shows that we need clear rules and, responsible use. As drones get more advanced, more integrated into our lives, we have to balance the good stuff, the innovation, with the need for safety and security. It's a tricky issue.
Yeah, definitely not simple. Speaking of things that are tricky and maybe a little scary, let's talk about hackers. One blog post I read was all about monitoring attack traffic, even on small websites. Why would hackers even bother with small sites? It doesn't seem very profitable.
Hackers are opportunistic, They're constantly scanning the internet, looking for anything weak they can exploit. Even a small website can be useful. They could use it to host bad stuff, like malware or launch phishing attacks, or even as a stepping stone to bigger targets.
So basically, they're casting a wide net, hoping to catch anything. But it gets even crazier. Did you see that even security research tools are getting hacked?
Yeah, that's a worrying trend. Shows how sophisticated these cybercriminals are getting. It's not just brute force anymore. They're using advanced techniques, compromising legitimate tools and turning them against us. Makes it harder to tell the good guys from the bad guys.
It's a constant arms race. But speaking of things that'll keep you on your toes, one article highlighted how much North Korean hackers stole this year. $1.3 billion. That's insane. Are you into crypto at all?
A little, but I'm very cautious.
Smart move. Because seriously, if you're messing with crypto, you got to be extra careful.
Absolutely. Crypto exchanges and wallets can be attacked. And because crypto is, decentralized, it can be almost impossible to recover if it's stolen.
So it's not just your own devices and accounts you have to worry about, but the platforms you use too. Switching gears a bit, there's been this increase in revenge porn using deepfakes. The Senate even passed a bill to make social media companies remove those images. But how effective can that really be? I mean, how can you even tell if it's a deepfake?
Yeah, it's a valid question. It's great that they're trying, but finding and removing deepfakes is a huge technical challenge. AI is making it harder to tell real images from fake ones, and social media is already struggling to moderate content. So how they're going to enforce this, it's a big question mark.
Feels like we're always playing catch up, trying to stay ahead of the bad guys as technology changes. And often, they're winning.
It's true. They often are. But that's why it's so crucial to stay informed and stay proactive. Understand the threats, adapt how you protect yourself, and push for stronger protections overall.
Well said. And on that note, we're going to take a quick break and then dive into some more fascinating and sometimes scary topics.
Before we move on, there's something else I think we should talk about. It's kind of disturbing, this trend of ransomware that doesn't actually want money. Just, destruction.
Yeah, that's weird, right? Like, what's the point? Most ransomware attacks, they're all about the cash.
Exactly. That's the classic model. But now we're seeing attacks where the goal seems to be just wreaking havoc, causing as much damage as possible. It's throwing a lot of security experts for a loop because it changes how we think about defending against it.
So if they don't want money, what DO they want? Is it just like cyber vandalism, or is there something more sinister going on?
That's the million-dollar question, right? There are a few theories floating around. It could be state-sponsored hackers, trying to sow chaos or mess with critical infrastructure, or maybe hacktivists with some political axe to grind. Some experts even think it could be individuals who just, I don't know, get a thrill out of causing as much damage as possible.
Okay, that's definitely creepy. It feels like this new kind of ransomware, it raises the stakes. If they don't care about our data or money, what are they after?
That's what we need to figure out. This shift in motivation, it means we can't just focus on preventing data breaches or financial losses. We have to think bigger. Consider the possibility of widespread disruption, essential services, critical infrastructure, even our daily lives. It's scary stuff.
All right, you've officially freaked me out. Let's try to change the subject for a minute, talk about something a little less apocalyptic. Did you see anything about the DMCA, the Digital Millennium Copyright Act? The Library of Congress is making some changes, specifically around security research and AI.
Oh, yeah, I saw that. Every 3 years, they review the DMCA and decide on new exemptions. This time, they added some for security researchers who are testing the vulnerabilities of AI systems.
So they're basically giving researchers the green light to try and break AI. That seems like a good thing, right?
hmm
Especially with AI becoming more and more, well, everywhere.
Definitely a good thing. As we use AI for more and more things, we need to understand how secure it is or isn't. These exemptions will let researchers really dig in and test things without worrying about legal trouble.
Makes sense. We need those smart people to help us stay ahead of the game when it comes to AI safety. But even with these exemptions, it feels like there's still a lot of gray area when it comes to AI and the law, right?
Oh, absolutely. AI is changing so fast that the law is struggling to keep up. We're seeing lawsuits about copyright, about who's responsible for AI-generated content, even about whether AI can be considered sentient. It's a fascinating and rapidly evolving area of law, that's for sure.
It's like the Wild West out there, but with algorithms instead of cowboys.
Speaking of things that are always evolving and not always for the better, what about those Microsoft patches? Another one for the Windows Common Log File System, or CLFS, whatever that is. Why does it seem like they're constantly patching that thing?
The CLFS, that's a core part of Windows. It logs all sorts of system activity. The problem is, it runs with really high permissions, which makes it a prime target for hackers. If they can exploit a weakness in the CLFS, they can potentially gain a lot of control over the whole system.
So it's like the master key to the Windows kingdom. No wonder hackers love it. But if it's so vulnerable, why doesn't Microsoft just fix it for good?
There's talk of a complete rewrite, but for now, it's this constant cycle of patch, exploit, patch, exploit. It's a prime example of how hard it is to secure complex software, especially when you've got really skilled hackers constantly trying to break it.
It makes you wonder if we're fighting a losing battle. But I mean, short of ditching Windows entirely, which isn't really an option for most of us, what can we do? Well, giving up isn't an option either. The best strategy is to have multiple layers of defense. Keep your systems updated, obviously. But also things like good endpoint protection and limiting admin privileges so that even if someone does exploit a vulnerability, the damage is limited.
Okay, good advice. Let's switch gears again.
Hmm.
I read about this lawsuit claiming that those website trackers, the web beacons, are actually a form of wiretapping. That seemed like a bit of a stretch to me. What do you think?
Yeah, that does seem like a reach. Web beacons or pixel trackers, they're just little bits of code that track website traffic and how people use the site. They're not recording conversations or intercepting messages like traditional wiretapping.
So why the lawsuit? Just a cash grab, or is there something more to it?
Probably a bit of both. But I think it also reflects the growing concern about online privacy.
Yeah.
People are realizing how much companies are tracking them and they're not happy about it.
I get that. It does feel like someone's always watching you online, but it sounds like the courts agreed that this wasn't real wiretapping.
Yeah, the Massachusetts High Court threw it out. But even though the lawsuit failed, it's a reminder that we need clear rules about data collection and online tracking. We need to find that balance between innovation and privacy. It's an ongoing debate.
Definitely not an easy one.
Yeah.
Speaking of ongoing debates, did you see that Senator Wyden introduced a new bill to improve cybersecurity for telecom carriers? Is that a reaction to that recent Salt Typhoon attack, the one by those Chinese hackers?
Most likely. That attack really exposed some weaknesses in our telecom infrastructure, and this bill looks like a direct response to that, trying to strengthen our defenses and make it harder for attackers to exploit those vulnerabilities.
So is this the government having to step in and force companies to do what they should be doing anyway?
It's complicated, but it does highlight that cybersecurity is everyone's responsibility. It takes government regulations, industry best practices, AD individual vigilance. We all have a part to play.
Teamwork makes the dream work, as they say. And speaking of teams, what about SaaS applications, the software as a service stuff? That's becoming so common now. But when it comes to security, who's responsible? The company using the app or the company providing it?
That's a great question, and it causes a lot of confusion. You might think that if you're paying a company to manage your cloud apps, security is their problem. But the reality is, it's ultimately your responsibility as the user.
Wait, seriously? Even if the vulnerability is on the provider's side?
Yep, even then, you own the data, and you're the one who'll be held liable if something goes wrong. You need to understand that shared responsibility model. Vet your providers carefully, make sure they have good security practices, but you can't just outsource security completely.
So we can't just trust the provider blindly. We have to do our own homework and make sure our data is protected.
Exactly. Don't be afraid to ask tough questions, read their security policies, even do your own audits if you need to. It's your data, and in the end, it's your responsibility to protect it.
Good advice. On that note, I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive and move on to our final thoughts. So we've covered a lot of ground today. Funding cuts, international tensions, hackers getting sneakier, AI everywhere. It kind of makes your head spin, right? What does it all mean for, the average person?
Well, I think the big takeaway is that cybersecurity is changing fast. The threats are getting more diverse, more complex. It's not just your stereotypical hacker in a hoodie anymore. We're talking nation states, hacktivists, even people who just want to watch the world burn, digitally speaking.
And their motives are changing too. It's not always about stealing data or money. Sometimes it's about disruption, destruction, or even messing with elections and stuff.
Exactly. So it's more important than ever to be aware, to think critically about what you see online, and to take steps to protect yourself.
Okay, that makes sense. But with all these different threats, different motives, it can be hard to know where to even start. What can we do to protect ourselves?
Start with the basics. Strong, unique passwords. Turn on that multi-factor authentication whenever you can. Keep your software and devices updated. The basic hygiene stuff.
So the digital equivalent of locking your doors and windows.
Pretty much. But it goes deeper than that. You got to be aware of the different types of attacks out there, like phishing scams, social engineering, malware. And think critically about what you see online. Don't believe everything you read, especially if it seems fishy or comes from a source you don't recognize.
It sounds like a lot of personal responsibility.
Yeah,
It's easy to feel kind of helpless. Like, what can I do against a nation-state hacker or super advanced AI?
I get it. It can feel overwhelming. But remember, cybersecurity is a team effort. We all have a role to play. Individuals need to be smart, but businesses and governments have to step up too. Strong security measures, holding each other accountable. We're all in this together.
It sounds like we need a whole new way of thinking. Cybersecurity can't be an afterthought. It has to be built into everything we do online.
Absolutely, and
Yeah.
that starts with education and awareness. The more people understand the threats and how to protect themselves, the better off we'll all be.
Couldn't agree more. Well, on that note of empowerment, I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive. But before we go, I want to leave you with one last thing to think about. We talked about that ransomware that's all about chaos, not profit. If money isn't the motive, then what eyes? Are we entering some kind of new era of cyber warfare with totally different goals? It's a question worth pondering as we navigate this crazy, ever-changing digital world. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and most importantly, stay safe.